Hi, my name is Brittany Tubbs. Last week, I was diagnosed with STRAUSS syndrome. It's a very rare disease that affects very minimum people. Like 1 to 5 people are diagnosed out of millions each year with this disease or syndrome. It's similar to vasculitis in the sense that it attacks the blood vessels, but it's oftenly misdiagnosed because it affects so many different things that doctors don't necessarily know what they're looking after. And my age group is not normally the target age group of what this disease affects. People tend to be a little bit older than me. I'm 27 years old. Most onsets come in their like early 40s or 50s. Basically, it all started about a year ago. I just felt sick one day. I was CNA, busting my butt, working 62 hours a week to bring home a decent enough paycheck to pay my car payment, maybe have a little bit of fun on the time I wasn't working, and getting into a new apartment. I shortly started feeling just like a cold, like I said, like run down, whatever. I know I work around germs all the time, so I really didn't think anything of it at first. 3 weeks goes by. I don't have insurance, so I'm not going to an urgent care clinic. I'm not really doing anything about it at this point besides trying to take every over the counter medicine possible. I mean, I tried Mucinex, ZQuil, NyQuil, DayQuil, knockoff NyQuil, DayQuil, Robitussin, every single thing, the neti pot, everything. And nothing really seemed to be helping. Finally, my sister noticed I was having a hard time breathing, and she had an old nebulizer machine from when she was little and she had asthma, and she told me it might help. So I tried that, and it actually did help a little bit. But I was spending most of my nights up, like hacking stuff up out of my lungs. I had to sleep with like an empty Poland Springs bottle next to my bed, and it would be like full of like mucus by the morning, which I know is completely disgusting, but I'm just trying to be truthful here. So finally, I called out of work. Like, I was so afraid to call out of work. I didn't want to get in trouble at work, fired, anything like that, especially because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just thought it was a cold. And you know what? I'm going to go to the doctors, tell them I have a cold. They're going to give me some medicine. I'm going to miss a couple days of pay and get yelled at for it. Not worth it to me. But it got to the point where I literally could not get out of my bed and go to my bathroom without completely being out of breath. I had to call my father. He brought me to the emergency room. I ended up being admitted with double pneumonia. They put me on prednisone. This was my first interaction with any kind of steroid. I felt wonderful. Within days, I was resuming my same activities. Was like, yes, awesome, cool. Everything's good. The taper, it like tapers you down slowly off the medication. So you start off taking maybe 5 of these pills a day, once a day, and then you'll take 5 for 3 days, and then 4 for 3 days, and 3 for until you're down to one, until you're down to zero. Well, about 3 days after completing the taper, I noticed all my symptoms were starting back up again. And I was like, wow, like what was the point of going through all this? So I went back to the emergency room. This time I wasn't admitted. They told me that pneumonia just didn't clear, and I just needed a little more time with the antibiotics and the steroids. So they put me on Levaquin, which is an antibiotic, and they put me back on a shorter dose of the steroids. So same thing happens. Go through this whole ritual of getting better, and then I'm getting worse. I'm literally walking up and down a hallway wheezing. My nurse at work checks my pulse ox. I'm only at like 90% air, which is ridiculous. And even though I was a smoker, there's no way at 27 from walking up and down a hallway you should only be at 90% air. So at this point, I take a couple more days off from work. I don't go back to the doctor yet. I just say, maybe I'm just pushing myself too fast back into work. So whatever, I try that. I'm still working, still pushing. At this point, getting maybe 1 or 2 hours of sleep per night between hacking up stuff and just generally being uncomfortable. I developed pleurisy from coughing so much, which is like fluid buildup around your rib cage. It hurts like the dickens. So then I'm rolling a patient one day, and I literally have to leave work, go to the emergency clinic because I thought I snapped a rib, which I didn't, but I could have very easily because I had bruised ribs. At this point, they're still saying it's pneumonia. It's pneumonia. and this pneumonia just isn't going away, which scares me because my mother died at 51 from lung cancer, and it was a very quick diagnosis and a very quick death. So I start taking this a little bit more seriously. I go down to the state office and get insurance because at this point I've now gotten verbal warnings from my job, and I know that I'm on a thin rope because I've missed so much time. So finally, when I got insurance, I went to the doctor, and they said, well, you have asthma, and you have very bad asthma, so we need to get that under control. They recommended me to a pulmonologist. I went on 2 different inhalers, Singular, and this other asthma medication called Theodore, or there's another name for it as well, Theophylline. So here I am taking like 4 or 5 pills a day on top of taking the Mucinex. They told me to continue to take that, taking an Advair inhaled steroid, and also taking a regular inhaler and doing a duo-neb twice a day, 3 times a day, depending on how much I needed it. And I'm really not even maintaining. I'm really not even feeling any better. So this goes on for months. Then I start getting like stomach troubles. Like everything I eat seems to be going right through me. They're trying to tell me I have IBS on top of this asthma. And I'm like, okay, I guess, whatever. Maybe I'm just eating the wrong foods. So I start eating a little bit differently. My stomach starts reacting a little bit differently. That part seems like it settles to an extent. But the breathing just kept getting worse and worse. I quit smoking at this point because I literally couldn't smoke anymore. And that was probably one of the hardest things at first for me to stop because I was so stressed out because I didn't know it was wrong. But I knew that my smoking was making it worse. So basically at this point, we're like 6 months in. I'm not getting any results. I'm feeling worse. I've dropped down to about 120 pounds because even being on the prednisone, I was using so much energy and so many calories just to breathe that like nothing was sticking to me. I went from a size 10 to a size 4, which sounds like a girl's dream, but when you're dropping the weight that quickly and that unhealthily, you're losing all your muscle. I no longer could like walk upstairs the same way that I was. I was tired all the time. I was really grumpy all the time. And it's because when I was sleeping, I wasn't breathing and my body really wasn't resting. Finally, I let my body take what it needed to do, and I cut my hours down to per diem. I only was picking up a couple shifts a week, and even that was beginning to be too much for me to juggle. Then I go again, I go to the hospital, and I'm having like really, really bad chest pains at this point. It's not just breathing anymore. It's like I feel like I'm having a heart attack. My pulse rate's like 200, and I'm sweating, but I'm freezing, and the doctors don't know what to do. They're running EKGs, they're running all sorts of machines, and then they tell me that I have an irregular heartbeat and that I have pericarditis, which is fluid that comes out around your heart. So I get treated for that. I was in Bacchus Hospital for 8 days for that. They released me. They said that, they did all they could do for the pericarditis, that it had cleared. I might still feel some residual pain for a while, which at this point I'm used to pain and, whatever. Also, previously to that admission, on December 9th, I had sinus surgery, which was when Churg STRAUSS was first brought up, but I didn't test positive for all the markers. And you have to test positive for 4 out of 6 to actually be considered to have Churg STRAUSS. So because there was that one indicator missing, I still was not diagnosed with this. And there was no way for them to tell that that's what it was. The surgery went really painful. It's like I had polyps in my nose, I had a deviated septum, and it didn't really seem to help and aid at all in my breathing. Like, I still felt just as crappy, and now I was getting bloody noses all the time, and I was in double the amount of pain from the recovery of that. Then, fast forward, still sick, I'm now admitted to Lawrence Memorial Hospital. This was my first admission to Lawrence Memorial Hospital. They said I had such advanced pneumonia that it was leaving scarring on my lungs. This was my longest hospitalization of 11 days so far. They had me on pain management drugs, to try to make sure that I was comfortable. They had me on also very high doses of steroids and IV steroids for the first time, like continuously, along with IV antibiotics and IV fluids because I was becoming dehydrated. I also then started again having tummy troubles with constipation. Stuff just wasn't clearing. Well, finally, stuff cleared enough where I was being able to be released. But I just felt like I was stuck in this rat race. Like it didn't matter what I did or what I said. And at this point, I felt like people stopped believing me that I was in pain. And they stopped wanting to really treat me because it was just coming up empty handed. This last admission is basically what got me all my answers, unfortunately. It had to develop to the point that it did. And it had to, give me this answer that I didn't really want. But this is what it boiled down to. I had been vomiting for about 3 days. I went to the ER. I told them I'm vomiting. I know this is common. Maybe it's a stomach virus, whatever. But I know at the very least I'm dehydrated and I need some help. So they gave me some fluids. They gave me some Zofran to relax my stomach. I started feeling a little bit better in the ER, and they let me go that night. I went to work the following night. I went to go to the toilet, and just pure blood was coming out of my colon. Because at this point, the syndrome had started attacking the blood vessels in my colon. This was the most painful experience of my life. It was embarrassing as well. I had to get ambulanced off the toilet at my job. And when I got to the emergency room, I passed out, apparently. It was just horrible. They were talking about putting me in CCU. I didn't actually have to go there, but I lost so much blood, and that's why I passed out from my colon being inflamed and from having colitis. And again, the pericarditis came back at this point too, which is almost a defense mechanism that my heart was putting up so that the infection couldn't get to my heart. Even though it wasn't an infection, it was the blood vessels reacting improperly. There's not a lot of information to go on. I've researched what I can. This is just me going on my personal experiences of what's happening. But I want to say that if you feel something's wrong with your body, keep pushing until you get the answers that you want, because nobody else is going to advocate for you. I mean, I know there was nurses and doctors looking at me like I was just here searching for pain medication, or I was just here to be here, like it's some kind of spa vacation for me. No, I was here and I had no idea what was wrong with me, and that part was killing me day in and day out. Then while I was here, as I'm getting off the toilet, the nurse noticed that there was like a spot on my foot. This spot on my foot slowly took over my entire body. You can see the remnants here and here. But it was all, there's other pictures. It was all over my body. It felt like my body was on fire. I had to have a biopsy done right there. And that one little spot was able to actually show them that it was STRAUSS. I wouldn't wish this upon anybody, to see yourself, like see my face and everything I've had to go through. But, it's going to be an uphill battle. It's an autoimmune disease. It's never going to go away. It can be managed, but I would just appreciate any help I can get right now, because right now my fiance is working 3 jobs to try to maintain any kind of lifestyle we have. I'm constantly having to run back to my father for help, who recently had to get back surgery himself and really isn't in the position to help me. Unfortunately, you get sick and your world stops, but the world around you doesn't. Car payments keep coming in, car insurance, everything else. And, prior to having medical insurance, I racked up $23,000 just being told I had pneumonia, not even with a diagnosis. And there's no way that I can get out of paying that money besides coming up with agreements with the creditors about that. And that's basically what I'm looking for help with. I'm not looking for a handout at all. If anything, don't give me anything, but listen to what I have to say, because if You start feeling any of these symptoms in any of this order and you're getting a black wall, please go to Lawrence Memorial. Please go to the nearest hospital to you and ask them to test you for STRAUSS. Because the sooner you can find out, the sooner you can start to fight, and you might not have to go through all the pain and all the symptoms that I or other people did, because it's the further you let it go, the more damage it causes to your body, and it can be a nightmare. So please be your best advocate, be an advocate to others around you, and aware yourself about this disease and this syndrome, because it is real, and even though it's rare, the more that we make ourselves aware about anything like this, the better outcome it is for everybody in the end.